Greenland.
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 When Western leaders eye foreign territories, it's called strategy. When others do the same, it's called aggression. When China flexes its military muscles towards Taiwan, the world erupts in outrage. When Russia invades Ukraine, a united West responds with devastating sanctions and military aid. Yet, when Donald Trump announces that the US must possess Greenland, calling it a necessity, the response is a deafening silence.
He wants the US to take control of
Greenland from Denmark.
Of using military force.
This stark contrast reveals a troubling truth about international relations. In a world where power shapes perspective, who gets to decide what counts as strategy and what counts as aggression? Apparently, it's a tale of two standards, one for the West and another for the rest. Greenland is the world's largest island and home to nearly 57,000 people. In the past week, it has dominated the media headlines, but not for its size, polar bears, or climate changes, but rather due to a revived American interest in the purchase of the island. This is an interest that dates back to 1946 when the first official offer was made to the Danish government. The offer was worth $100 million. Then back in 2019, Donald Trump stated that the US must have Greenland. And fast forward to 2025, he called it a necessity for the US to buy or have control over Greenland.
People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world.
Apart from Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and French Foreign Minister, the response to Trump's claim have been minimal. Now, compare this to the response when China threatens Taiwan. The US immediately pledged military support, economic consequences were threatened, and President Joe Biden told CBS 60 Minutes that the US would defend the island if it were attacked. But the West has not been as quick to respond to Trump's claim regarding Greenland. It comes as no surprise that America's desire to control Greenland isn't just about expanding its territory. It's about keeping superpowers such as Russia and China away from controlling the Arctic region. Greenland sits namely at a critical location between North America and Europe, offering control over vital shipping routes. And with climate change melting Arctic ice, Greenland's value has only increased.
You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen.
The island is also rich in minerals that are essential for modern technology and holds untapped gas and oil reserves. It also provides strategic monitoring of Russian military activity through the US airbase. As Russia expands its Arctic presence and China calling itself as near Arctic state, Greenland has become a key piece in the global power puzzle. This explains the US desperation. It's not just about owning an island. It's about securing and strengthening America's position in an Arctic region that is changing. This strategic importance raises a crucial question. If China were to declare that controlling Greenland was necessary for its Arctic interest, would the international response be as muted? The pattern suggests otherwise. Although the Greenland Prime Minister has stated that they are not for sale, the double standard is deeply rooted in the global power structure. The reason being that the sale of territories is a tradition commonly executed in the United States and Denmark. The latter one, for instance, sold 3 islands to the US back in 1916, today known as the United States Virgin Islands. Meanwhile, the US purchased Alaska from Russia in 1867. This makes a valid point that buying territories is not new to the countries involved in this mess. And when Western nations act, their motives are wrapped in the language of democracy, security, and economic necessity. No matter how aggressive their actions are, they are justified as strategic and stabilizing. Yet, when non-Western nations act and make similar moves, they are painted as threat to the global order and peace. Take the United States, for example. Its history is filled with interventions and territorial expansions. The Iraqi invasion in 2003. The mission was to spread democracy despite the absence of weapons of mass destruction. Compare this to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, condemning a violation of international law, leading to economic sanction and political isolations.
And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. If they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
Trump's claim and statement about Greenland is the case study of this hypocrisy. Because the answer to the double standards lie in who controls the narrative, and it's where media and power play their hand. The US is rarely portrayed as an aggressor in the mainstream Western media outlets, even if its actions define that. Conversely, any move made by Russia or China is magnified as a threat to global order and global peace. This narrative control extends to how public perceive these actions, hence the disparity in reactions we have seen so far. This also reveals that the West sets the rules, enforces them, and labels itself as the arbiter of global justice. Meanwhile, the actions of non-Western powers are exaggerated to fuel fears of instability. The former vice president of World Bank, Ismail Serageldin, said in 1995 that the wars in the 21st century would be fought over water. 30 years later, so is the case. Whether it's Arctic, South China Sea, or Panama Canal, water is the common factor here. Ultimately, the double standards in the global world is sustained by a combination of historical privileges, media influence, and the strategic interests. As long as the West continues to control the narrative, it can dictate what counts as aggression and what counts as a strategy. The question is not whether the double standards exist. They do for sure. But how long will the world be able to tolerate them before demanding a more equitable system? Time will tell, but what is certain is that the response to Trump's claim to buy Greenland would have been dramatically different if it was initiated by either China or Russia, or North Korea for instance. The world would have hit the roof. So, are we more tolerant when the so-called West acts more aggressively compared to the East?